Snowflake Scratch Art with Ms.Boley. Today we're going to learn about contrast and about line and pattern. We will need wax crayons, some items to scratch with, our visual journals, and I recommend using acrylic paint and a brush in a dark color. If you don't have this, it's okay. Stay tuned, and at the end of the video I'll show you what to do with just your wax crayons. I hope you're ready. Let's get started. First, we're going to learn about some important terms. So line is the path of a traveling dot. And as we know, we can make many different types of lines. On this picture, we can see a zigzaggy line that goes up and down, a really thick line, and a dotted line. A pattern is a design where lines and shapes are repeated. In this slide, we can see two examples of a pattern. We have repeating heart shapes, repeating leaf shapes, and repeating dot shapes, and also repeating lines. And finally, we need to know about contrast, which is basically just difference. Difference between art elements, like colors, like we see with the dark blue and the pink on this slide, and difference in size, like we see with the small dots and the big dots, and textures. Using contrast results in all of the elements of the artwork being more powerful. So I am starting out with my blank visual journal page and my wax crayons, and I'm going to draw a square in the middle of my visual journal page. My square is very big. You do not have to make such a large square. You can make it slightly smaller if you want. Once I have my square drawn, I'm going to begin coloring with crayons, and I'm going to color the whole square. So I'm not going to color it the same color. I'm going to switch off and use a bunch of different colors. And I'm going to be going over this with black paint or black crayon after I'm done filling in the whole square. So I'm choosing colors that are bright. So I've decided to go with some pink. The purple that I chose was maybe not bright enough. I found that the brighter the color, the better it works, because more contrast between the crayon color and the black paint that I'm going to paint over top. Let's snap our fingers and move ahead with some of this coloring. Wow, here we are. We're all done. Well, is there something that I should be going back and fixing though? This little area right here is looking great. Same with up here, great. But these areas here have too much white spaces in between my coloring strokes. Because I want this to be really waxy to resist the paint that I'm going to paint on top, I'm going to have to go back and fill in some of those white spaces. This picture shows two coloring examples side by side. One of them is really awesome and one of them may not work for the scratch art. So this one with the check mark is going to work better because it has a thicker layer of wax crayon and no white spaces. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to fill in those white spaces with my crayon. Okay, I'm all done. Now I'm going to take my black acrylic paint. See, it says acrylic paint on the container. This kind of paint will also work. And just aim for a dark color. It doesn't need to be black, just any dark color. And then what we do with our acrylic paints is that we squeeze out a small amount onto some sort of surface. So it could be just a plastic lid like I'm using here, or a piece of wax paper. And then I'm going to use a paintbrush, and I'm going to pick up a small amount of paint with my brush, and I'm just going to wipe off some of those crayon crumbs. And then I'm just going to paint using small strokes onto my crayon. One thing to notice with my paintbrush is that I'm holding it up so that it's mostly on its tippy toes, and I'm moving it in a downward motion on the paper. So I'm always going in the same direction with the brush, and the bristles are happy when I do that because they can all stay together. So paint your square of crayon all black. Okay, we are almost all done. Once we're all done, we're going to go wash our brush and let our paint dry. We don't have to just sit around and wait for our paint to dry. We can practice drawing a snowflake. So I've grabbed a scrap sheet of paper, and one super easy way to draw a snowflake is to draw an X and then just draw a vertical line down the middle of the X. And then from there, you can add all sorts of other lines and different shapes and different patterns. Let's take a look at some pictures for inspiration. This is a simple snowflake we can draw by starting to do a horizontal line, and then by doing a vertical line, and then adding all the extra designs. So if you pause here, you can get some inspiration for snowflakes that just are drawn with a horizontal and vertical line as the starting point. These next designs are drawn by doing an X, and then by drawing a up and down or vertical line in the middle, and then adding all the extra decorations. So pause here for designs that start in that way. And these designs are the most challenging. So they start with an X, and then we do a up and down vertical line, just like the last ones. And we finish off by adding a horizontal line to that, and then all the extra designs and decorations. So pause here for designs that start in that way. So I am now just going to keep drawing my snowflake design. Just because I'm drawing it on the paper doesn't mean I have to use it in my scratch art. It's just nice to kind of have a little bit of a plan before we start scratching into our scratch art. All right, all done. Let's go check on the paint and see if it's dry. So it feels like it's mostly dry. So I'm going to try scratching into it. So I've grabbed some objects. I thought the spoon would make a good scratcher because I could scratch a large area with that flat side. And then with the fork, I was also going to use the flat side, not the fork, the part that you eat with, the back part. And same with this chopstick, I thought I could use both sides and maybe the back of the paintbrush. A pencil that doesn't have any lead in it, that the lead has broken, is a really good scratching tool too. I just wanted to find some tools that would create different sizes and different types of line. So there we go. I basically am just using that stick to scratch. And I found that it's kind of not scratching off all the way. And so what I think that might mean is that my paint isn't fully dry yet. So I'm just going to wait a second and let it fully dry. Okay, we've waited a bit longer. We're back. I think it's probably a bit more dry now, and it is scratching off a little bit better. So if you're finding there's some areas that are not, the paint isn't scratching off very well, just kind of go back and go over it again. You may have to scratch a couple of swipes, a couple of scratches in order to reveal the beautiful colors underneath the black paint. So I am doing an X, and I'm going to do a design that's based on the drawing that I did. And I hope that you use some of the pictures in this video earlier for inspiration while you're scratching. And yeah, this is super fun. Try out some different tools, try to make some different lines, maybe thin lines, maybe thick lines, and create a beautiful snowflake design. So now I'm switching over to the other side of that stick, and I'm going to try to get a different type of line. So I have a thinner line when I use the other side of that tool. So try to do some experimenting and see what kinds of results you get. If you happen to make a mistake when you scratch, like I just did there, there's really no going back. We can't really well, I guess we could try to paint over that area again, which might work. But you maybe just have to roll with any mistakes that you make and just turn them into happy little accidents. Any mistake can be turned into something that maybe doesn't look like a mistake. And that is one of the things that's really cool about making art. Something else we want to try to do is balance out the amount of black area and the amount that we scratch away. Because if we don't have enough areas scratched away, there won't be enough contrast in our art. And if we have too much areas scratched away, the same thing, we won't have enough contrast. So we want to maybe scratch away full little sections of our snowflake and not just have lines only, but have shapes as well. So if you don't have any acrylic paint at home, no worries. You can still do the project with just wax crayons. So the starting process is exactly the same. We're going to draw a box and we're going to color it in with our wax crayons, leaving no white spaces. And once we have our beautiful square with our bright colors with no white spaces, we're going to use our black crayon and we're going to layer it over top of our colors that we laid down instead of the black paint. So again, we're going to want to make sure we don't have spaces in between our coloring strokes and that we are covering up the colors as much as possible with the black crayon. And then once we have all of the colors colored over with the black, the scratching process is exactly the same. So I found that it didn't make as vibrant of colors show up underneath when I used the crayon, but it definitely did work, and I did really like the results of this as well. So just like with the black paint, if part of the crayon is not scratching off, part of the black crayon isn't really scratching off, we just scratch a little bit more in that area, and sometimes that helps the color underneath to show up a little bit more. So yeah, you can just continue to scratch your snowflake design into your box that you've colored. Have fun! And here were my two snowflake designs side by side. This was really fun. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks so much for watching.